Ballad of Johnny Arcane by Jim Nail, read by Jim Nail. Chapter 7, Johnny Arcane, Messenger, Part 1. 5 summers passed. Johnny Arcane grew a long beard and gradually settled into his role as messenger. For a while at least he lost sight of that which first drove him away from his home and onto the open road. The power that ran through his bloodstream and kindled his earliest stirrings. The call of the sojourner. It was partly due to his shame. From his moment of triumph at the top of the silo at Kingcorn, through the resonance of the crowds following his drumbeat into the dance at Castor Bean's great hall in Stubblefield, he had begun to imagine himself as some sort of legendary figure. Borderbinder returned to open the four directions, or maybe someone more than Borderbinder. Arcane, Arcane, they cried as they carried him aloft into the crush of bodies at the Cornfest. He began to hear his name as more than a name. In the dingy room of the log house at the Dolmans, everything fell apart. When he read the words of the message he was delivering from Stubblefield to Sputum, he was overcome by 2 waves of remorse. The first was the banality of the message itself and the recognition of his foolishness, how he had thought he was bringing some great heraldry of which he himself was the portent. The one who was to come, the deliverer. But far greater was the wave of shame when he realized what he had done. He had broken the seal, and so deceptively, melting the wax carefully to keep the insignia intact. And all because of pride. In a single fall of an envelope, his pride was severed. He presented the message to Clangbanger at Sputum without apologies. The metalworker appeared to suspect nothing. From Sputum, Johnny was dispatched on his next assignment, carrying a thick envelope, dusty with flour, from a baker to a woman of interest in the town of Fair Heart. 10 days walking to the west. And so it began. Johnny accepted his duty with a sense of willingness at first, but little by little he began to take pleasure in the feeling of a job well done. And there were other pleasures as well. At roadhouses, he sampled the variations of local cuisine, from cats to goats, rutabagas to thistleberries. He made friends with the locals and the fellow travelers. They often shared stories late into the night. And if there were musicians, they would soon be pulling out the fiddles and the squeeze boxes and swapping stovepipes and slip jigs, the instruments always fully tuned. And there were women who liked him, and he liked them too. Sometimes they kissed him, and he always kissed them back, but he never let a woman into his bed. His heart was decided. He could not go back to Lucy. She was from the time of his innocence, before he broke the vow. But he would stay true to her fading memory. And he did not touch intoxicating drink again, nor did he indulge in the crazy blues smoke that was sometimes passed around. He knew where it would lead, and he would not go there. But the blood of the sojourner was never far beneath his skin. It moved through his veins and cycled rhythmically through his heart. He memorized the lay of the land, and he paid attention to the roads not taken. Often later, an assignment would take him down these very roads, and another piece of the puzzle would fall into place. He saved every map that was drawn for him. They soon strained the closure of Mayor Casterbean's metal box. He especially liked the ones that were rich in detail. Sometimes at night, in the solitude of a roadhouse room, he got out the maps and pieced them together, trying to match the boundaries and build a bigger map, one that encompassed the entirety of the world through which he traveled. In the beginning it fit on a table, but quite soon he had to spread it out on the floor. The river only did in fact bisect the map down the middle from north to south. You had to know where the bridges were if your destination was on the other side. The only formed a bed of a valley so broad there were places where you could see nothing but a horizon of cornfields in all directions. Neither the valley's head nor its foot was on his map. The northernmost village he had seen was Cabbage, at the foot of the Blue Hills. The southernmost was Arden's Plain, where the only fanned into a delta, creating many small islands and bogs where rice was grown. Mountains rose slowly to the west, the east, and the north, but he saw no mountains to the south. South, the map ended at the delta. The sky above the delta was always hazy and brown and smelled like smoke. Johnny's home was northeast of there, about 4 days walking through the scrub hills, where the scent of sage was strong. He had not seen his mother, nor did he wish to, although once, on assignment, had taken him along the Scrub Hill Ridge Road, past a bluff to which he had occasionally climbed as a child. He paused here and looked out over the familiar terrain. Off in the distance, he saw the rise of Gravestone Hill, where Huxley, Vermilion, and Rugchomper were buried. "Someday I'll be able to see you again," he said. He wiped a tear and moved on. At the end of Johnny's 5th summer, a messenger, a young woman in the south-central village of Beltone, dispatched him to bring a message to her father. Curvy Gray Road, the Hermit King of Hermittown. Hermittown was an encampment in the woods of the Blue Mountains, 6 days walking southeast, crossing the river only on the rickety back bridge. Curvy Gray Road was its king only by default. He had gone there to live a life of solitude, but soon others followed. Mostly ragtag people who were born with hollow places in their heads, people who couldn't spell their own names or count past the number of their fingers. They lived in tents in the woods around Curvy's cabin. They came and they went. In spite of his thirst for solitude, Curvy had a heart that needed to beat. So he organized these people into a loose-fitting political body. He found small tasks for each one, and he created a simple set of rules that everyone was willing to follow. He showed them how to forage for food and prepare meals, how to bathe in the creek. For these reasons, they called him the King of Hermit Town. Johnny found him in his cabin on a cool, crisp evening. The king ripped open the letter without ceremony and read its contents out loud, but in such a muffled voice that Johnny understood none of the words. "Damn my daughter and her empty-headed mother," he exclaimed as the letter fell to the ground. "They think it's possible I could be a town person again. Never, never. Let the slave grinding at the mill run out into the field and look up in the heavens and laugh in the bright air. Let the unchained soul rise up and look out. His dungeon doors are open." The old man became quite agitated, shaking his arms as if they were chains attached to them, his long white hair leaping like a flame of phosphorus from his head. But soon he ran out of steam. His shoulders slumped, and he just stood there for a long time, nodding his head in agreement at some undisclosed truth. "If you want to eat, there's some snake meat. But you can't sleep here. You have to find yourself a place in the woods." After dark, a few of the residents of Hermit Town were drawn out of curiosity to Johnny's little campfire in a remote corner of the forest. They hovered in the shadows like shy deer, shifting their weight from side to side, sometimes making soft, cooing sounds. "Come on over if you want to share the warmth," he told them. "You got anything to eat?" He had not been able to stomach King Grey Rose snake meat. They crept forward, slowly, cautiously. There were 5 of them. 4 men, 1 woman, as best as he could tell. They were dressed in filthy rags. One man held up a burlap sack. There was something moving in it. "I got frogs," he said. Johnny eyed the sack. They're alive. They're moving." The man nodded. "They stop when you put them in the fire. Watch." He reached into the sack and pulled out a large bullfrog with fat legs and a throbbing glottis. With a grunt, he tossed the creature into the flames. Of course the frog tried to escape, but the man caught it and threw it back in, then cradled the fire with his hands so it couldn't get out. When it let out its death croak, everyone laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was more like children laughing at a clown. The man held the charred remains up in Johnny's face. "Here," he said. So Johnny ate the frog. He had no choice. It did not taste bad. Several other frogs were roasted and eaten. The hermit people sat on the ground. Johnny asked their names. Most of them did not know. The man with the sack said his name was Frog. This made everyone laugh. All night long, curled in the womb of a rotten stump, he was troubled by a whistling sound high in the canopy of trees overhead. Every time he drifted off to sleep, it pierced the darkness and shook him from a dream of frog ghosts with translucent green wings. At the first tinge of dawn, he got up, hefted his pack, and took the path through the woods to the main road where he expected he would be dispatched on his next assignment. An autumn rain was beginning to fall, the drops drizzling down through the branches. Johnny kept seeing things from the corners of his eyes, movements in the underbrush, like he was being trailed on both sides. In the path behind him, he heard branches crack. He quickened his pace. The distance seemed longer than it had the day before. Had he lost his way? But no, ahead loomed the road at the base of a series of switchbacks. Suddenly, there was a voice behind him. "Wait!" He wheeled around. A person stood in the bracken. It was one of the frog eaters from the night before, and gradually he realized it was the one he took to be a woman. In the plain light of morning, she didn't look so crazy. She still wore the same filthy rags, but there was something clear about her eyes. "You're a messenger, aren't you?" she said. "I am," he replied. In the silence that followed, the woman raised her arms and lowered them several times, like she was trying to pick things out of the air. Her lips quivered around words she was unable to form. "You're not one of them, are you?" he said. No, I'm not. It's complicated. I can't explain. I need you to send a message for me." She was holding a stained piece of parchment, folded unevenly, no envelope. "That's what I do. Where's it going?" "It's for the mayor of King Corn. His name is Burly Man." Johnny felt his knees go weak. Burly Man. Memories flooded up from a deep well inside him, voices that had been silent for so many years. "Arcane, Arcane," they cried as they carried him aloft through the crowd. "Can't untune my instrument," said Jocko as he thumped the string. "Got no pegs." "Then I'll come with you," said Ant, on the road out of town. "I can be your companion, your helpmate." And then something else rose up from a deeper place and overpowered all the other images. One day, foot travel south of King Corn, the bathhouse, Bow Wow, Lucy. "You'll have to draw me a map." "You don't need a map. Surely you know how to get to King Corn." "King Corn is where I started out as a messenger. I saved every map that was ever drawn for me. If I retrace my steps, it would take me 5 summers to get there." "You don't have to retrace your steps. Just head north on the forest road." "How many days walking?" "I don't know how many days walking." She looked around behind her on all 4 sides of her. "Please, just take it. I have to get back before they miss me." The woman thrust the message into Johnny's hand, then turned and fled.
Arcane